You know, no one really prepares you for that moment when your home suddenly feels too big for your life. The kids have long moved out, the laughter has faded down the hallway, and one day you catch yourself wondering why you're dusting guest rooms that no one slept in for years. It sneaks up quietly, this strange realization that your house has turned into a museum of memories and mismatched furniture. That's where the real conversation about moving to a smaller home in old age begins. It's not just about fewer rooms or lower bills. It's about what happens inside you, the mix of nostalgia, relief, confusion, and yes, freedom, when you start letting go of the space that once defined your entire world. Downsizing sounds simple on paper: sell, pack, move. But once you start thinking about it, you realize it's not just a change of address. It's a change of rhythm. It's the moment you start measuring comfort differently, not by square footage, but by how light you feel when you wake up in the morning. And if you do it right, this chapter can be one of the most liberating, refreshing seasons of your life. So let's talk about what no one tells you about moving to a smaller home in old age. The emotional truth, the hidden joys, and the surprising lessons behind it all. When people talk about downsizing, they often focus on the physical side of it: smaller space, smaller bills, less clutter. But the first big truth you'll discover is that it's really about reclaiming your time. A big house has a way of stealing your hours. Every weekend becomes a to-do list: mowing the lawn, fixing leaks, cleaning rooms no one uses. There's always something waiting for your attention. But the moment you move into a smaller place, something beautiful happens. The house stops running you, and you start running the house. You wake up on a Saturday and realize, for the first time in years, there's nothing that needs urgent fixing. You can actually sit down with your morning coffee and just be. That's what moving to a smaller home really gives you: control over your time again. It's funny how quickly you feel the difference. One friend of mine used to joke that his old house was a full-time job with no paycheck. Between the roof repairs, the weeds, the cleaning, he never had time for himself. After he sold it and moved into a 2-bedroom with a small porch, he said he finally had time to sit on that porch and watch the world go by, something he dreamed about for years. That's the quiet gift of downsizing. Weekends that belong to you again, quiet afternoons that don't demand anything, naps that don't feel like guilty pleasures. The space you give up in square feet, you gain back tenfold in peace. But it's not just physical space that shrinks, it's mental clutter too. When you no longer have a house full of things to do, your brain relaxes. You stop waking up thinking about maintenance. You start waking up thinking about life. Many people who've gone through this change say they didn't realize how much mental energy their big home was draining until they left it behind. It's true, we get so used to carrying the weight of responsibility that we forget what it's like to live light. For a while, you'll probably catch yourself thinking you should be doing something. Then you'll realize you already did it. You let go. You moved into freedom. And that's where the second truth shows up: your stuff has to shrink too, but your life doesn't. If you've lived in one place for decades, you know how sneaky things can be. Drawers, closets, basements, they multiply quietly. The first time you start packing, you'll open a cabinet and wonder where on earth all this came from. Every casserole dish, every box of old files, every jacket from 10 winters ago feels like a memory. But here's the thing: not every memory needs to take up space. The moment you start letting go, you'll realize most of what you own represents old versions of yourself: the one who hosted dinner parties, or the one who worked full-time, or the one who once thought they'd take up woodworking. Those versions mattered, but you've already lived them. You don't need to carry them all with you. The act of sorting through your things can be emotional, even overwhelming at times. You'll laugh at the 8 casserole dishes you've somehow collected. You'll feel sentimental over clothes from a past decade. But something magical happens as you keep going. The more you let go, the lighter you feel. It's not about throwing away your past, it's about giving yourself permission to step fully into your present. Each item you release frees up not just space, but energy. And that's when you realize that downsizing isn't about living with less, it's about living with just enough to serve you, comfort you, and make you smile. One woman described it perfectly. She said she didn't downsize her life, she right-sized it. That's the shift. You're not shrinking your world, you're tailoring it to fit who you are now. Maybe you only need one favorite mug instead of 20. Maybe you keep one coat that feels right instead of 5 that just fill the closet. It's not minimalism for the sake of being minimal. It's making space for the life that actually fits you today. And once the clutter clears, something even more meaningful begins to unfold. You start discovering your new rhythm. When you move to a smaller home, it shouldn't just be smaller. It should be smarter. The design, the light, the layout, all of it shapes how you move through your day. Maybe you like your morning coffee by a sunny window. Maybe you prefer to read at night without tripping over furniture. This is your chance to rebuild your daily rhythm in a way that truly fits. There's a small but powerful truth many people learn too late. Stairs get taller as you age. What used to be nothing suddenly becomes an effort. Carrying laundry up and down starts to feel like an Olympic sport. That's why thinking ahead matters. A single-floor home isn't giving in to age, it's planning smart. You're designing your comfort, not admitting defeat. I knew someone who learned this the hard way. He thought a 2-story cottage would keep him feeling young, but after a year of hauling groceries upstairs and forgetting his glasses every other trip, he decided he'd reached his lifetime stair count. He moved again, this time into a cozy single-level apartment, and said he's never been happier. So, when you're looking for a new place, don't just look at square footage. Pay attention to the layout, the light, and even the sound. A smaller home can feel huge if it's well designed. Notice where the morning sun lands, how noise travels, how the space feels when you breathe in. Ask yourself simple but revealing questions. Where will I drink my coffee? Where will I read? Where will I rest when I need quiet? If the answers come easily, that's your sign. The right space feels natural from the first walkthrough. And when you find that spot, the window that catches the sunrise just right, the chair that seems to invite you every morning, you'll realize this isn't just about downsizing. It's about right-sizing your life around what really brings you peace. But there's another part people often overlook when talking about moving to a smaller home in old age, and that's what happens outside the house. Because as much as we focus on walls and furniture, your happiness often depends on what's beyond those walls. The people, the rhythm, the community. You can find the perfect little house, but if it's in the wrong neighborhood, it can feel hollow. One woman I know moved 2 towns away for a great deal, a beautiful small house, but soon realized she missed her old coffee shop, her familiar cashier, the neighbor who used to wave from across the street. The new town was quiet, but not in the peaceful way. It was lonely. She said it felt like living on the moon. Eventually, she moved back closer to where her life felt connected, even if it meant a smaller apartment. That's something few people warn you about. Community matters more than square footage. You might think you want peace and quiet, but peace without connection quickly turns into silence, and silence can feel heavy. The best downsizing stories always include people who found not just a smaller house, but a warmer neighborhood. The barista who remembers your name, the neighbor who waves, the grocery clerk who asks how you're doing. Those small daily touches weave meaning into your days. So when you visit potential homes, take a walk around. Visit the local cafe. Listen to how people talk to each other. You'll feel it right away, whether it's friendly and open, or cold and distant. The truth is, a small home in the right community will always feel larger than a dream house in isolation. And finally, there's the part of downsizing that hits both the wallet and the heart. It's not just financially smart, it's emotionally freeing. At first, most people think of money, lower bills, lower taxes, less maintenance. That's all true, and it's a relief. But the bigger reward comes later, when you realize how much lighter you feel. A large home, especially one filled with decades of memories, can start to feel like a museum of your life. Every corner whispers something from the past, the room your children grew up in, the garden your partner loved, the walls that hold echoes of another time. Beautiful memories, yes, but heavy ones too. Letting go of that space doesn't mean you're leaving those memories behind. It means you're giving them a softer place to live. Inside you, not in the house. I once met a man who stayed in his family home for 3 years after his wife passed. He said it felt like living inside an echo. Every room reminded him of something that used to be, until one day he decided to move to a smaller condo by the lake. When I asked how it felt, he smiled and said, "I can finally breathe again." That's the quiet miracle of moving smaller. The memories come with you, but the heaviness doesn't. You stop worrying about keeping everything perfect. You stop living to impress anyone. Suddenly, you can clean the whole house in an hour and still have time for a walk. You stop managing the past and start living in the present. And slowly, you begin to notice, the space you gave up in your house has turned into space in your mind. That's the trade nobody talks about, but it's the one that makes downsizing feel like a new beginning instead of an ending. So yes, moving to a smaller home in old age isn't just about saving money or cutting square footage. It's about gaining freedom, peace, and a little adventure back. It's the moment you start designing a life that finally fits, not the life you had 30 years ago, but the one you deserve now. As the days settle in your new home, you start to feel the rhythm of this smaller, simpler life. That's when something unexpected happens. You begin to realize that downsizing doesn't make your world smaller, it makes your focus sharper. You start noticing things you'd forgotten to appreciate, the sound of rain on a smaller roof, the way morning light fills every corner instead of being lost in endless rooms, the warmth of being close to everything you need. What once felt like less, now starts to feel like enough. And when enough starts feeling right, peace follows. But of course, not every part of moving to a smaller home in old age feels easy. There's a moment. Sometimes it hits during packing, sometimes after you've moved, when you're struck by the quiet. The house feels too still, the walls a little too bare. This is where you face what I'd call the emotional echo of downsizing. You've let go of things, yes, but you've also let go of certain versions of your life. The kids' laughter isn't coming back from that hallway. The dinner parties have turned into small dinners for two, or maybe just one. There's no shame in missing that. It's part of being human. But this quiet space isn't empty, it's open. And the openness is your invitation to fill it with new sounds, new faces, and new meaning. People often mistake letting go for losing. But letting go can actually be an act of love. Love for yourself, for your present, and for what's still to come. When you allow yourself to grieve the past while embracing the freedom ahead, you're not erasing your story, you're continuing it. The house may have changed, but your life hasn't stopped growing. You're just planting new roots in a smaller pot so you can still bloom. Now, once you've adjusted to the emotional side, the next truth about moving to a smaller home in old age reveals itself. You start living more intentionally. Every object, every piece of furniture, every routine earns its place. There's no longer space for maybe someday. Everything that stays, stays because it matters. Your bookshelf becomes a reflection of who you are now, not who you used to be. Your kitchen holds just what you actually cook with. Even your calendar starts to clear of unnecessary noise. This kind of intentional living has a quiet power to it. It gives your days structure and your actions meaning. You might find yourself revisiting old hobbies or discovering new ones. Maybe it's gardening in pots instead of a yard, painting by the window, or simply walking more because you live near a park. That's the subtle magic of smaller living. It puts you closer to life again. Without all the space to fill or maintain, you naturally gravitate toward things that fill your spirit instead. You notice sunsets more often. You talk longer with neighbors. You stop rushing because there's nowhere you need to be except right where you are. And that's where the sense of freedom deepens. You're not just free from clutter, you're free from the expectations that used to come with that big house. You don't need to host to prove your hospitality. You don't need to decorate to prove your taste. You don't need to maintain rooms to prove your success. You start realizing that real success at this stage of life isn't about how much you own, but how peacefully you live. It's about waking up without feeling like your home is managing you. There's something deeply healing about that. Many people describe this stage as a kind of lightness of being. When your home no longer demands your energy, you can finally direct that energy back to yourself, to health, to joy, to people. A smaller space asks less of you, so you have more to give. That shift can reignite a sense of vitality that's easy to lose when you're weighed down by upkeep and endless chores. And with that energy, you start reconnecting with yourself and with others. Because here's another quiet truth. A smaller home can bring people closer, literally and emotionally. When you share a smaller space with a partner or family member, you naturally spend more time together. Conversations happen more easily when you're not spread across floors or separated by long hallways. You eat together more, you laugh more, you see each other more. Even if you live alone, a smaller space keeps you grounded in a way that encourages connection with the world outside. You can walk out more often, meet friends, or join local activities without feeling tied down. The irony is beautiful. By shrinking your home, you expand your life. And this leads us to one of the most inspiring lessons of downsizing in old age. It opens space for new experiences. When you're not constantly maintaining, paying for, or worrying about a big home, you have both time and money to explore. Maybe that means traveling, maybe it's volunteering, or maybe it's simply having the freedom to say yes to spontaneous plans. I once met a retired couple who sold their family home and moved into a small apartment downtown. With the money they saved, they started taking short trips every few months, small adventures that filled their calendar with new memories. They said their smaller home became their charging station, not their cage. That's the power of living light. It gives you room to move, to breathe, to live again. Now, one question always comes up when people talk about moving to a smaller home in old age. How do I know when it's time? There's no one-size-fits-all answer. For some, it's a practical decision. The house is too big, the bills too high, the maintenance too much. For others, it's an emotional one. The space feels empty or outdated for their current life. But usually, the signs start quietly. You stop using certain rooms. You start to feel tired just thinking about the upkeep. You realize you're living around your stuff, not with it. Those are gentle signals from life nudging you toward change. It's not something to fear, it's something to listen to. The hardest part isn't deciding what to keep or where to move, it's believing that smaller can actually be better. That belief shift takes courage, especially if you've spent decades associating bigger with success. But when you make that leap, you often discover that the space that once symbolized achievement now feels like an anchor. Letting it go is like taking off a heavy coat at the end of winter. At first, you feel exposed, but then the warmth of freedom starts to sink in. What really helps in this transition is reframing the story. You're not downsizing out of loss, you're curating the next chapter. Think of it as editing your life story, removing the pages that no longer serve the plot so the next ones can flow naturally. You keep the memories, the lessons, the love, but you leave behind the unnecessary weight. That's what makes this move not a retreat, but a renewal. You're designing a lifestyle that matches your current season, one with fewer demands and more possibilities. When you look around your new, smaller home and see how everything has a place and a purpose, there's a deep satisfaction in that simplicity. The kitchen that used to overwhelm you with space now feels cozy. The living room feels intimate. Even the sound of your own footsteps feels gentler. You realize that home isn't defined by how much space you have, but by how comfortable you feel inside it. And this comfort, this calm sense of belonging, is something many people chase for years without realizing it's waiting for them in a smaller place. As weeks turn into months, you'll start noticing something subtle but profound. Life feels slower, in the best way. Not stagnant, just calmer. Meals taste better when you eat them without rushing. The air feels fresher when you open the window every morning. You start appreciating routine again. Maybe you find joy in simple rituals. Watering plants, reading by the window, cooking for one or two instead of a crowd. The world outside might still be noisy and fast, but inside your little home, there's peace. And that peace is worth every cardboard box you pack to get here. Of course, not every day will feel perfect. There will be moments when you miss the past, when nostalgia tugs at you unexpectedly, the sound of a creaking floorboard, the smell of an old room, a memory that floats up out of nowhere. But those moments aren't setbacks, they're reminders of a full life lived. The beauty of downsizing is that it doesn't erase your history, it simply lets you carry it more lightly. And in carrying it lightly, you leave space for new memories to grow. Eventually, you'll look around your smaller home and realize that it fits you perfectly, not because it's grand, but because it's honest. Every corner, every item, every choice reflects who you are now, not who you were expected to be. That's the quiet triumph of this journey. Moving to a smaller home in old age isn't about saying goodbye to your past, It's about saying yes to your present. It's about trading excess for essence, noise for stillness, and space for peace. When you really think about it, that's what life has been leading you toward all along. A place that feels enough. Not crowded, not lonely, not heavy. Just enough. Enough space to live freely, enough comfort to rest easily, enough peace to wake up grateful. That's the heart of it. Downsizing doesn't shrink your life. It right-sizes your happiness. So if you're standing on that edge wondering whether it's time to move, remember this. What you're really doing isn't moving out, you're moving forward. You're stepping into a chapter that values peace over possessions, simplicity over status, and presence over pressure. The house may be smaller, but your life? It's about to feel a lot bigger. And that's the real secret no one tells you about moving to a smaller home in old age. It's not about losing space. It's about finding yourself again.